The X Zone Radio Show with Rob McConnell is largely an opinion talk show. All opinions, comments, or statements of fact expressed by Rob McConnell's guests are strictly their own and are not to be construed as those of the X Zone Radio Show or endorsed in any manner by Rob McConnell, rel-mar McConnell Media Company, the X Zone Broadcast Network, its affiliated networks, stations, employees, or advertisers.
All Hit Radio.
Welcome to the X Zone, a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. Now, here's your host, Rob McConnell.
And welcome back, one and all. This is the X Zone, and I am Rob McConnell. We're coming to you from our broadcast center and studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. If you'd like to check out the broadcast schedule we have available on the X Zone Broadcast Network, visit www.xzbn. And we're coming to you around the world tonight on the Talkstar Radio Network, Mutual Broadcast Network, X Zone Broadcast Network, iHeartRadio, Simul Radio, and Simul TV. My guest this hour is Mark Stavish. He is the Director of Studies at the Institute for Hermetic Studies. He is a lifelong student of esotericism with over 25 years' experience in comparative, religion, philosophy, psychology, and mysticism, with emphasis on traditional Western esotericism. Joining me now is Mark Stavish. And Mark, welcome back to the X Zone. It has been way too long, my friend. How have you been?
Very good, and it's great to be here.
You've got a new book that is out entitled, Egregores, the Occult Entities That Watch Over Human Destiny, and it's been published by our good friends at Inner Traditions. Tell me about it.
Well, the book itself has a little interesting story behind it, because I was sitting with a friend of mine, Jocelyn Godwin, a professor of esotericism and Renaissance studies, known to probably many of your listeners, and I just mentioned to him, I said, I was thinking about writing a book on egregores, and he said, well, that's just wonderful, because if you don't do it, I'm going to have to. And the reason we were talking about it is because it's a topic very well known among esotericists and students of occultism and spirituality. Mm-hmm. And as we get into it, your listeners are going to realize they're familiar with it too. They just don't know it by that name. So I decided to write the book.
Well, tell me, what is an egregore, and how did they come into existence, Mark?
Well, there's two understandings of it. One is the classical meaning, and the other is kind of the modern meaning. What they both share in common is that it's a collective group consciousness. So all of your listeners are familiar with that because they've heard of, the Jungian collective unconscious, or a corporate culture, or a group mind. Okay? So they know the idea. Now, they come into existence either intentionally or unintentionally. Yeah. So in a sense, anytime we get together with a bunch of people, we kind of form a little collective awareness. But often they disappear. They don't last long. And many of them don't really have much of an impact on our life, or it's short-term. So if you belong to the PTA, or the local bowling league, or something of this nature, your stamp club, all of these things have their own kind of awareness or groupthink, if you will. Now, there's another way they come into existence, too, intentionally, which is classically, and that is where the group mind, here down on terra firma, is connected to, in theory, a spiritual entity in the invisible. And that's where it gets interesting. So we then have a relationship, not only to the group as an individual, but that group then has a relationship to a spiritual or psychic force of some kind.
Well, then tell me, when then is the relationship between an egregore and a tulpa?
Oh, well, the relationship is that both are thought forms, because everything begins in the mind.
Right.
We have to really understand that. But not all thought forms are tulpas, okay, in the sense, or should we say not all thought forms are egregores, okay? Now, a tulpa is a magical emanation. And, of course, many of your listeners are familiar with the example which we give in the book from Alexandra David Neal from her book Magic and Mystery in Tibet, in which she talks about consciously creating a thought form of a kind of jolly monk. And, of course, the idea goes, according to the story, that it took a lot of work. It didn't just happen overnight. It took months. And then slowly she could begin to see this thing. And then other people could begin to see it, and then would take it for being real. And then it took on a life of its own. And then she had to, with great effort, dissolve it. So anytime we're engaged in a magical creation, an intentional act, we could say, we're kind of creating a tulpa.
So basically you're creating something out of nothing except pure thought.
Correct.
Gotcha. How come this hasn't been, publicized, and why don't people realize that this is something very real, and it has nothing to do with the paranormal, it has nothing to do with science fiction, it has nothing to do with magic or the occult, that this is something that we are creating ourselves? I
think because it's all of those groups that are investigating it or involved with it. And we even see in contemporary studies of parapsychology an almost fear of using the word parapsychology. Even some of the literature, they want to distance themselves from it. So often many of the people who study what we can call mind sciences are constantly looking, instead of at the work, but a way to get the work just listened to and not dismissed out of hand. So, part of it is, that's part of the equation. The other part is that, well, to some degree, who does it serve for you to remain ignorant of the power of your own mind? Who does it serve for you to be aware of the power of your own mind? Well, it serves you as an individual.
Sure.
But it takes effort. One of the reasons egregores come into effect is because, as the Lama said, according to the story, according to David Neal, I do with the help of others what I cannot do on my own. So people are constantly trying to get you involved in their projects and in their groups and in their, their recent campaign to save the world in some fashion. And all of that is a feeding ground for their activities, their ambitions, their projects, for good or ill, okay? And it doesn't really serve them for you to go off and do your own, to be your own individual.
Now, when did you first become aware of the notion of the egregores?
Well, that was always part of my studies because, again, it is a word which you come across in traditional Western esotericism. The different esoteric or initiatic and mystical or magical orders that exist will often refer to it, but they often refer to it in a different way, usually a group mind or collective mind or something like that. You hear some of them refer to being fully contacted. That phrase gets thrown around a bit. But the notion of it, as that word in particular, really came into my awareness through the teachings of the French alchemist Jean Dubuis. And he was involved in many of the French esoteric groups that I was involved with, in their American version. And, he would say that, well, you have to always be careful of these groups that you're in because who do they really serve? Who does the group serve? And that we should distance ourselves from any egregore or collective activity that we don't necessarily have to have, that isn't in our best interest. And that was stunning because up until then, I was always given the impression, because of the literature and the teachings, that these collective egregores were really in our best interest, particularly initiatic ones, these societies. But then when you look at it, and if we look at what's going on in many of the religions around the world today, you can see that it isn't always that way. So we have to be careful.
So would it be safe to say that egregores are responsible for what many people call paranormal events?
Oh, very much so. Oh, definitely. And on the world scale, if you will, in particular, the notion is it happens in the invisible before it happens in the visible. Now, going back to the classical period, what the Roman priests would do, and of course others as well, I just mentioned those in the book,
Certainly.
is they would create these models of the war before it would take place, the battle before it would take place, and they would ritually enact it with the notion that they would somehow magically conquer the enemy and, of course, attach or bring its psychic energies into their camp and thereby defeat the enemy before the actual battle takes place.
Mark, stand by. You and I have to take our first break, and X Zone Nation Mark Stavish is our guest, a good friend of the X Zone. And Mark's, the website that we're talking about tonight is www.hermeticinstitute.org. That's www.hermeticinstitute.org. And Mark and I will be back on the other side of the short commercial break as we continue here in the X Zone from our broadcast center and studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. Now, don't forget, X Zone Nation, you can still go online with our compliments and read the August-September edition of the X Chronicles newspaper, 92 full-color pages, and the front page has a picture of an astronaut on the moon and two words in big green print says, "They lied." The story's inside, and it's yours to read at www.xchroniclesnewspaper.com. Whether you're a skeptic or a believer, join me, Rob McConnell, as together we'll investigate the world of the paranormal and the science of parapsychology here on the X Zone Radio TV show on XZBN and the X Zone TV channel on Simul TV. Since 1990, the X Zone Radio TV show has been the place where people dare to believe and dare to be heard. Together, we'll investigate UFOs, aliens, ghosts, Bigfoot, psychic phenomenon, lake monsters, conspiracy theories, government cover-ups, the truth embargo, alien abductions, ESP, haunted locations from around the world, and so much more. With over 28 years of broadcasting and more than 4,500 individual guests, the X Zone is truly a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality, as evidenced by the credibility, integrity, and professionalism of the guests that we bring to our international audience. If you have seen a UFO, had a close encounter, seen a ghost, Bigfoot, lake monster, or a story that you would like to share or have investigated, contact me, Rob McConnell, by sending me your email to xzone@xzoneradiotv.com, or you can call toll-free 1-800-610-7035, extension 143, and on Skype, X Zone Radio TV. For more information on the X Zone Radio TV show with yours truly, Rob McConnell, visit www.xzoneradiotv.com or www.xzonetvchannel.com or simultv.com and xzbn.net. Until next we meet here in the X Zone from our broadcast center and studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada, always remember, X Zone Nation, keep your eyes to the sky and your heart in the light.
You have heard of the X Zone? Now watch it on Simul TV, plus 500 video games, live TV channels, free video on demand, worldwide, and more. Does this sound like tomorrow's television? Well, it is, but you can have it today, right now. It is Simul TV. Simul TV offers what the others only wish they could provide. 15 exclusive channels like X Zone, sci-fi, and horror. We are worldwide. No other provider offers that. 500 built-in video games. No need to have an extra expensive system. We have them included. Free video on demand. Live streaming events from around the world. Interactive online network and much more. Tomorrow's TV today. Simul TV. Sound too good to be true? Well, it's not. You can have Simul TV today. Sign up at simultv.com. Do it today.
Mark Stavish is our special guest this hour, explanation, hermeticinstitute.org. So when people are seeing ghosts or spirits or even UFOs, are they actually seeing or what they witnessing evidence of egregores?
Probably not in most cases. They're probably seeing residual psychic phenomena or individually motivated psychic phenomena of some kind. Where they're where there's a possibility of them seeing an egregore, it might be at a large historic event. Okay, something that has taken place. People go to battlefields and see things, or people that go to, say, Versailles and say they see things. That's probably a possibility right there. Egregores, psychic phenomena associated with egregores, tend to be much more immediate. That is either for the health and wellness of individuals within it, such as a prayer circle or a healing circle or a prosperity circle of some kind. But think of that on steroids when you're dealing with some of these larger religious and metaphysical organizations, or even political ones, because the political organizations generate an egregore as well, sometimes intentionally. As far as UFOs, now that's a very interesting question, because Jacques Vallée, of course, would suggest that definitely that's really what we're seeing, because probably what I have found to be the greatest problem in contemporary studies is that the parapsychology groups, the UFO groups, the esoteric groups, they tend not to talk to one another. They exist in these little echo chambers.
Yeah, that's
so
true.
They're not really communicating well, and therefore we're not making substantial progress in a broader cultural understanding of what this phenomena is. So in part, and not to be too hard on it, but the very people involved in it are sometimes not really helping us understand this as well as they could. But when an egregore materializes, and we'll give the example that Vallée does and Dubuis did as well about UFOs, it is for an intentional purpose. And often that intentional purpose, it may or may not be in our best interest. Another good example of what is probably a manifestation of an egregore would be like the sightings at Fatima or things of that nature, those large-scale sightings that go on for days.
So could it be, is it possible then with the increased number of so-called demonic hauntings or demonic possessions, that these are actually egregores?
Or coming out of them in some way. One of the most disturbing factors in contemporary spirituality is the dramatic increase in the interest in, for lack of a better term, call demonic magic. Okay, it's always been around.
Yeah.
Okay, it's always been part and parcel of the studies, but there's been both positive ways to deal with it. I know your listeners may find that hard to believe, but most of the time what we come across is more less than positive or negative ways of dealing with it. And there is been a tremendous uptick in publishing and interest and discussion of that kind of phenomena and practice really over the last 5 to 10 years.
Could that be because it's the forbidden fruit and everybody wants to take a bite?
Yeah, and it also has big promises. It promises a lot of things. I mean, that's the goal. People go to magic because they want to speed up the time cycle. I mean, time-space is the enemy. Okay, so we're always trying to find ways to overcome time-space, and magic promises that. So you're dealing with something that is extremely, according to theory, powerful and potent, and offers a tremendous amount of resources for accomplishing your goals, which tend to be what? Money, success, power, revenge, health, healing, shortcuts of all kinds. But it becomes a Faustian deal for most people who go down that road.
So basically, but does magic actually deliver what it promises?
Well, that's on an individual basis. You really have to look at it. Does anything deliver what it promises? I mean, do the churches? I mean, not to be put too sharp a point on it,
Sure.
but let's look at the train wreck formerly known as the Roman Catholic Church at the moment. All of them have significant issues and problems, all of them. So the difference is within esoteric or occult practices or even mystical practices within the churches, and there are many good ones, that it is really the individual's effort that makes the difference. And, everyone that I have known, and not to digress too far into this path, and of course I did write a very good book on the subject called The Magical World of Dr. Joseph Leshevsky. I mean, he was very famous for alchemy as well as his demonic magic. But almost everyone I know who's gone down that road has ended poorly, as well as those people in the mainstream churches, such as in the deliverance ministries, who undertake the role of exorcist. Many of them end poorly as well.
Have you yourself had good experiences and bad experiences with these egregores? And if so, can you share them with us?
Oh, sure. I've had wonderful experiences, and so have all of your listeners. I mean, just think of the wonderful time you had when you found a group of people who you could talk about these things with and you felt at home. I mean, just think of the wonderful time you had maybe when you were in some group when you were a child or even an adult, or you're, an activity in college or on a sports team, or when you're out there doing a project to make your neighborhood better. Or possibly even you found a meditation group, and it fits for you. And there's wonderful egregores. I mean, even families have egregores, and there can be wonderful ones in communities. So this should not be in any way a condemnation of them across the board, because they're a natural part of our human interaction. What I'm just saying, though, is they don't always work in our best interest. We have to know when and how to recognize it, and we have to know when to separate. Just as an adult, as much as we may not like it, as a young adult, we have to leave home and go on our own way. As we may not like it, we have to graduate from school. You can't stay in graduate school forever. At some point, you got to get a job and go on your own way.
What has been the most negative experience that you have heard of?
And this is in the book. And I want to just say to the listeners, I specifically picked 3 examples that were extreme to make the point. Mm-hmm. Okay? That's very important to understand. And I have come across this often in different areas. Usually it's profound physical illnesses. Very strange and bizarre physical illnesses, too. Often debilitating and wasting diseases of the muscles and blood. And that should not be a surprise when we look at, again, what does the Bible say? But the life is in the blood. And that's, so these things sap the life force or energy out of the people involved in them.
So does somebody have to recite an incantation in order to either put the egregore on someone else or have it affect their own lives?
Yeah, you can't. It's really kind of hard to get someone involved in it. You have to want to be a part of this activity. Mm-hmm. You have to really want to be a part of the group, because it's a group mind. It's hard to get someone into a group mind that doesn't want to be there. So the negative impacts that I've seen with people directly are always on the individual who's involved. Any negative impact on those nearby is just like anything else negative, whether it's drug addiction or alcoholism or bankruptcy. It's just they happen to be in the splash zone. But what I'm talking about is people who are involved in stuff, and it just absorbed them. It really did, and you can see that in non-esoteric or non-occult practices too. People who just become completely absorbed in television shows or completely absorbed in sports. You know, it's not that they're a bad thing. It's just it takes over all of their time and energy.
So how do you break away from it?
Well, you know, it's like an addiction. You have to recognize that this is no longer healthy for you, and you have to separate out from it. And I tell people, because I focus mostly on spiritual and religious egregores for people, you know, but there's political ones as well. You see that people who are obsessed with politics, okay, is just take everything in your house associated with it, because by now they're probably surrounded by statues and pictures and crystals and whatever, diplomas. Put them in a box and put it in your closet for a month. And just notice how your perspective on yourself and life changes when your attention isn't constantly being directed elsewhere. And that's the first thing. And sometimes, though, some people then need to move from that. They need to move to a safer egregore, you know, another hobby, another activity, another spiritual group. But the first thing is kind of try and go cold turkey so that you can really see how much of your time and space was absorbed with this group activity.
All right, Mark, stand by. We've got to take our news break at the bottom of the hour. Exonation Mark Stavish is our special guest this hour. And for more information on Mark, visit his website, hermeticinstitute.org. Mark and I return on the other side of this break as we continue here in the X-Zone from our broadcast center and studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. I'm Rob McConnell. Don't go away. Broadcast studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada, to the world and beyond. You're watching the X-Zone Broadcast Network, www.xzbn.net.
AVS Media Demo.
You have heard of the X-Zone? Now watch it on Simul TV, plus 500 video games, live TV channels, free video on demand, worldwide, and more. Does this sound like tomorrow's television? Well, it is, but you can have it today, right now. It is Simul TV. Simul TV offers what the others only wish they could provide. 15 exclusive channels like X-Zone, Sci-Fi, and Horror. We are worldwide. No other provider offers that. 500 built-in video games. No need to have an extra expensive system. We have them included. Free video on demand. Live streaming events from around the world, interactive online network, and much more. Tomorrow's TV today. Simul TV. Sound too good to be true? Well, it's not. You can have Simul TV today. Sign up at simultv.com. Do it today.
Did you know that when you're on the road with limited data or Wi-Fi, you can still listen to the X-Zone Radio Show with Rob McConnell, The Science of Magic with Gwilda Wiyaka, X-1, Dimension X, Space Patrol, and every minute of the X-Zone Broadcast Network by calling 213-401-0080, courtesy of Audio Now. No smartphone, app, or internet needed. It saves your data plan, and it's free if you have unlimited minutes. Call 213-401-0080 to listen on any phone, anytime, anywhere. Remember, 213-401-0080 for the best of the paranormal, parapsychology, and sci-fi radio programming anywhere, 24/7, 365. Rob McConnell here, presenting an overview for Nicholas Paul Jennings, author of a fascinating book, Amen. It presents facts revealed by Egyptologists, facts that enable us to understand why Amen is the beginning of creation of God. It provides recommendations for religious leaders of the major religions to unify their beliefs and teach the Word of God. love one another. Amen informs people how mankind conceived God. It was the Egyptians that developed the concepts of a soul, a hereafter, and Son of God. And finally, after the worship of many gods, they conceived the belief in one universal God, the maker of all there is. For more information, visit www.futureofgodamen.com. That's www.futureofgodamen.com. Exonation Mark Stavish is my special guest this hour. We're talking about Mark's new book called Egregores, the Occult Entities That Watch Over Human Destiny. And the website is hermeticstudies.org. hermeticinstitute.org. Mark, can we say that all egregores are just compulsive attitudes, that there's nothing, there's nothing out of the ordinary about it? It's a person's own desire that allows them to get engulfed. For example, some people are addicted to casinos. Some people are addicted to alcohol. Some people are, addicted to watching binge TV. Is this a fallacy of the human psyche, or is there more to it? And how do we prove there's more to it?
Well, I think there is more to it, and because on one hand they are, I think you termed it quite well, this obsessive-compulsive attitude. Again, Vallée uses the term the social control mechanism to describe a lot of UFO phenomena, and egregores are social control mechanisms because they create a filter around how you view everything. I mean, all you need to do is talk to someone who's completely absorbed into, Roman Catholicism, okay, or fundamentalist Christianity, or the New Age movement, okay, or Tibetan Buddhism. They have a language, they have a perspective, they have a view that just filters everything. Talk to someone who's completely involved in the political views, okay, whether it's left of center, right of center, whatever. That becomes their view. So it is a social filter, and it becomes compulsive. However, the question is there something metaphysical driving these things, or at least benefiting from it? And traditional spiritual studies, whether it's Eastern or Western or others, often would say that behind our actions, we are not alone in the world. And human beings tend to think that there's just us here. And they give lip service to the ideas of invisible beings, whether elementals, angels, demons, ghosts, what have you, but they don't really believe in them. Whereas when we're dealing with this notion of egregores, it's not only do our thoughts have power and our thoughts are things, but the thoughts of a variety of other beings have power and are things too, and are attracted according to what? Like is attracted to like on the mental and emotional level. So the theory goes, and I tend to believe it because I've seen it in so many ways, that people, through their activities, become kind of a psychic energy buffet for the invisible. And you see that, for the most part, in hauntings. I mean, in a lot of that paranormal phenomena, it's well displayed. But it's in others as well.
Yeah, but once again, I'm having a hard time to see how this could be attached to anything more than a mental condition.
Well, we can't prove it. I mean, that's the whole problem with much of the metaphysical studies, is we can't prove it. And the critical essence here is, even if it is attached to something metaphysical, paranormal, that's almost irrelevant because the individual is still responsible for their participation. And it's the individual who can say, I'm done here. I'm moving on. So my thing, what I would like to say to the listener is, don't get too hung up on the metaphysical view. That's part of it, but that's not an excuse. Ultimately, we're responsible for our lives and our destiny, and that's what the book is about, having people look at their relationships to the groups they're in and the activities they're in, and just ask themselves this simple question: is this good for me? And if so, sure, stay. If it's not, well, time to go.
So basically, it's you're just telling people to be responsible for their own actions.
Yeah, very much so, but we both know how difficult that can be as a message.
I understand that, but looking at the big picture, Mark, you say the Egregores, the occult entities that watch over human destiny. How can we say that they're occult entities when there is no physical proof of their existence, but there is psychological proof that this is a manifestation of the person's own psyche, that we cannot with any certainty attach it to anything else but them?
Because even the word occult means hidden.
Yes.
And these compulsive things that occur within people psychologically are hidden to them. They're not aware of them. They slide into it. So we can look at the word occult in two ways there. One is the fact that it's this hidden driver in their psyche that they themselves have created and participated in as well through these associations. Or, as I said, there's two meanings here. Or we can look at it traditionally and classically, that in addition to that, there may be additional metaphysical intelligence that's behind it. Whether we're talking ghosts, whether we're talking angels, whether we're talking demons, whether we're talking a host of, possible mythologies here. That is the other possibility. But you're right. At the end of the day, people have to say, why am I here? Why am I involved in this group? And is it working for me?
Okay,
so self-reflection.
So basically, it's the old adage from the Flip Wilson days of "the devil made me do it." We're passing the buck and trying to give something or someone the fault because we don't want to accept responsibility ourselves.
Yeah, I've seen that happen. Yeah, and that can happen. People become so absorbed in the group mind that they just pass the buck on to their guru or their teacher or their politician, but at the end of the day, that doesn't work.
I see this quite often within different paranormal groups, ghost researchers or hunters, whatever they want to call themselves, UFO investigators, demonologists. Everybody slices into a specific category where they feel most comfortable. And something that I've noticed over the years, Mark, is that the people who get involved in the aspects of the paranormal that are wide and varied fit nowhere else in society. They're sociological outcasts.
Well, and George Hansen wrote a book called The Trickster and the Paranormal. And it's a large book, and it's probably the best book on the subject, and it's just about that very topic, the liminality of all of this. Why is it that so many of these groups come and go so quickly, that they aren't stable, that they don't last long? And what is it about the psychological nature of so many of the people involved in them, that causes this breakdown? And also what happens to a society when we push the paranormal and for lack of a better term, into the city square, if you will. So there's a lot to be said for that. And of course, however, there are some people who are quite good at it. We often don't see them. They remain in the background because it's easier that way or safer. And they do manage to get through life and have productive and meaningful lives. But you're correct. Overall, from what we see, it's not that.
The day of the professional or the diehard scientist when it comes to the paranormal or parapsychology is gone. Like, there are very few true parapsychologists left. There's a lot of wannabes out there. There's a lot. I was talking to a so-called leader of a paranormal group the other day, and she said, listen, we know that the evidence that everyone is seeking when it comes to the the paranormal will never be found. But it's a great way to get to meet other people and to hang out and do interesting things.
Well, yeah, I was talking to George about this just last Friday, and I asked him, I said, what's the state of studies, research in the U.S.? And the response was that it's dead in the water. I mean, he had worked at both the Princeton Laboratory and Rhine Research Laboratories in the 80s.
Yeah.
And, he said at this moment there's probably only one person doing full-time research in the United States. We have a lot of amateurs out there who don't know anything about science and don't know anything about statistics, but then we have a lot of professionals publishing, too, that don't know much about statistics because it makes for a bestseller. As far as evidence, I do believe that there probably is some very good statistical evidence from all the years of research, and we have well over a century and a half of it. But getting it out there and getting it understood is difficult because it tends to be pretty dry and boring at times.
I think that's one of the major problems we have today is that there are too many amateurs out there calling themselves investigators. They're giving bad advice to people who are looking for help, and thanks to the so-called reality TV shows as well as the amount of garbage that is found on the internet, they feel by calling their local Ghostbusters is going to solve their problems. And I've seen ghost researchers or paranormal researchers now giving out psychological advice, and they have no right doing that, and I believe that they're going to cause more harm than good because of the lack of experience and the non-existence of educational accreditation that should go along with this.
Well, and that's where the problem is that people they want to believe, and their desire for something new and exciting overwhelms their reason.
Hey, Mark, I hate to do this, but I've got to take my final break. Please stand by. Exonation Mark Stavish is our guest, and his website is www.hermeticinstitute.org. We'll be back on the other side of this short break as we wrap up this hour here in the X Zone from our broadcast center and studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. Don't go away.
Zone? Now watch it on Simul TV, plus 500 video games, live TV channels, free video on demand, worldwide, and more. Does this sound like tomorrow's television? Well, it is, but you can have it today, right now. It is Simul TV. Simul TV offers what the others only wish they could provide. 15 exclusive channels like X Zone, sci-fi, and horror. We are worldwide. No other provider offers that. 500 built-in video games. No need to have an extra expensive system. We have them included. Free video on demand. Live streaming events from around the world. Interactive online network, and much more. Tomorrow's TV today. Simul TV. Sound too good to be true? Well, it's not. You can have Simul TV today. Sign up at simultv.com. Do it today.
Whether you're a skeptic or a believer, join me, Rob McConnell, as together we'll investigate the world of the paranormal and the science of parapsychology here on the X Zone Radio TV show on XZBN and the X Zone TV channel on Simul TV. Since 1990, the X Zone Radio TV show has been the place where people dare to believe and dare to be heard. Together, we'll investigate UFOs, aliens, ghosts, Bigfoot, psychic phenomenon, lake monsters, conspiracy theories, government cover-ups, the truth embargo, alien abductions, ESP, haunted locations from around the world, and so much more. With over 28 years of broadcasting and more than 4,500 individual guests, the X Zone is truly a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality, as evidenced by the credibility, integrity, and professionalism of the guests that we bring to our international audience. If you have seen a UFO, had a close encounter, seen a ghost, Bigfoot, lake monster, or a story that you would like to share or have investigated, contact me, Rob McConnell, by sending me your email to xzone@xzoneradiotv.com, or you can call toll-free 1-800-610 7035, extension 143, and on Skype, X-Zone Radio TV. For more information on the X-Zone Radio TV show with yours truly, Rob McConnell, visit www.xzoneradiotv.com or www.xzonetvchannel.com or simultv.com and xzbn.net. Until next we meet here in the X-Zone from our broadcast center and studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada, always remember, X-Zone Nation, keep your eyes to the sky and your heart in the light. Exonation Mark Stavish is our guest this hour. www.hermeticinstitute.org. So at the end of the day, Mark, when we look at all the different scenarios that are or can be pointed towards the Egregores, how does that affect society in general? If we're saying that, these are actions that the people themselves are creating.
Because we're constantly being invited to participate in these collective identities, whether it's your sports team for the college that you went to. I mean, here in Pennsylvania, we have bumper stickers that say, if God isn't a Penn State fan, why is the sky blue and white? Yeah. Okay, so it's something constantly trying to draw you back into, Penn State football. But it goes beyond that, because we have people constantly trying to draw you into their political action, into their social action, into a variety of activities that are just entertainment.
But what you're giving me here are everyday examples of marketing, everyday examples of recruitment. And I don't see anything.
Exactly.
I don't see anything out of the ordinary about this.
There's nothing out of the ordinary about it. But if we're not careful and we're not selective about the ideas we expose ourselves to and where we put our attention, we become absorbed into these other activities. And at the end of the day, what do we have to show for our lives? We have an entire generation now, mostly of young men, that spend up to 8 hours a day on video games. And that's all they think and talk about. That becomes a collective identity for them. We have a lot of young men who, because of their military experience, come back and that is all they focus on, even when they're out. So we ask ourselves, how do we get this culture of violence when that is all we see, not all, but almost exclusively, in our media? Look at Netflix and just look at what is their primary theme. Dystopian futures. These are not innocent ideas. Ideas are not innocent.
But what are we supposed to do? Take the choice that people have the God-given right to have and start dictating and becoming Big Brother, saying you can't watch this, you can't do this, you can't join this, you can't join this? Where does that start? What are we supposed to do, Mark? And once again, I have to go back and say I don't understand the significance, because all I'm hearing are examples of everyday life.
But that's the reality of it. That's the problem, is that it's not always as dramatic as people would like.
So what? All right, you said that. You said that is the problem. What is the problem?
That if we are not observant, if we are not reflective on what is going on in our lives become consumed or subsumed to other people's goals and ambitions, whether they be spiritual, whether they be political, or whether they simply be, we'll call it marketing, okay, or commercial in nature. We have to become more reflective, first of all, on ourselves, and with that responsibility for ourselves. We have to say, what is where's my life going here?
Okay,
what am I doing with it?
Let me use this example. You've just come out with a book. You are doing the radio circuits in order to promote your book, to get people to go to the website or go to Amazon, anywhere else, to buy your book. Aren't you doing the exact same thing that you're writing about?
In a way, but at the same time, I'm not asking them to join a group. I'm not asking them to make it a life mission.
Well,
I'm
wait a
not
sec.
asking them
You
to
are
dedicate themselves to anything. I'm just asking them to read the book, consider what it has to say, and then make more conscious decisions about what they participate in, particularly in the lines of spiritual activity.
All right, but let's
everything.
look at the big picture here. You're asking them to buy your book, which means other people of like mind with the same interests are joining in purchasing this book. So you're not doing anything different than what we've been talking about.
The only difference is I don't have any hidden agenda. I'm not, again, the notion of the collective, it has a variety of levels to it. One of them is that we always have interactions with people on a day-to-day basis, so they're unavoidable. The notion of the egregore is, again, a social control mechanism. I'm not looking to create a social control mechanism. I'm not looking to create a filter whereby this is how you view all of your activities in life and exclude all others. And therein would lie the difference. I'm asking you to take a look at the filters that you have in place and see if they help and serve you.
Okay, let's take that premise. Inner Traditions, a good company. They spend thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars on advertising. The object of the advertising is to get the people who have shown in the past or are seeking information that Inner Traditions is supplying by the different authors and the different books, the different categories, the different subjects. But the filter is still there. The filter is the targeted marketing area and criteria that will buy the books that Inner Traditions will publish. So once again, isn't this a little bit like the kettle calling the pot black?
Well, no, because you always have a predisposed audience no matter what you do.
Right.
There's always certain predispositions. It's just the nature of it. And remember, I didn't say that all of these things were bad. I've said to people, who complain about, should this spiritual group advertise? I said, well, I don't know. I mean, how is anybody going to know about them if they don't? How are they going to get the word out?
But is it really up to anyone else to dictate to another what they should do or what they shouldn't do? If the paranormal group wants to advertise, big deal.
But that's the very point about the book, is not to allow yourself to be dictated to unconsciously. See, the nature of the social control mechanism, of which the egregore is that it controls you and dictates to you unconsciously. You just kind of slide into it. It's like political correctness. Political correctness, how does that work? People self-censor. That's the problem. So this is how egregores work. It's a view that you adopt. It happens often, willfully in the beginning, or slowly, but then it begins to cloud your perspective and vision on everything else, religiously, politically, or economically, what have you. And I'm just saying, in the book, step back and take a look and see if these views are working for you or not. But I'm not asking you to join a group. I'm not asking you to swap your view for mine. I don't care if you believe that there's spiritual entities in the universe or not. It doesn't matter. I don't care if you believe that there's such a thing as a collective consciousness or a corporate mind or not. It doesn't matter to me.
If it doesn't matter to you, why did you write your book?
Well, as an individual, I don't care, but there are people who this may help. There's some people who have said they found that it changed their whole perspective on all of their relationships.
Would this not be a person who does not have the strength to actually look at themselves in the mirror to see what is wrong with their lives?
I don't know. I can only tell you what they've told me. I don't know them well enough to make that assessment. But that's all we're asking to do, is just take a look at everything that you're exposing yourself to and asking yourself, is it healthy? Is it working for you?
But what gives anybody else the right to ask a person that question?
I ask it of my children all the time.
But we're not talking about your children here. We're talking about people who you're marketing towards selling a book to, and you're asking them these questions. What gives anybody the right to do that? I can see it if it's your children. It's your right as a father or a grandfather. I can see that.
Because we live in a society together, and that society means that we interact.
But
and at some point, there's going to be friction between beliefs and actions, and sometimes we can smooth those frictions away. We can begin to make them easier by simply asking questions of ourselves and of others. And if I ask it of myself, I can share it with you. I can say, you know, it was really helpful for me. I was in this group. It was a spiritual group. I had a lot of friends in there. Things were fantastic. They were working very well. And then, you know, there's a change of leadership. Someone might have stole some money, and it just got horrible. Things fell apart, and I just felt, you know, like my whole life was ripped away from me. I didn't know what to do afterwards. You know, I hear that experience so many times from people. And just helping them work through the trauma of that experience alone makes the book worthwhile.
Mark, it's time for you and I to say so long. I want to thank you for joining us tonight here on the X Zone and X Zone Nation. If you would like to get more information about what we've been talking about here this hour in the X Zone, Mark's website is www.hermeticinstitute.org. That's www.hermeticinstitute.org. I don't know, Craig, was I missing anything? You know, I can't understand the significance of this book if you don't want to tell people what they should do, or what the effect of belonging to this group or that group may be. It's nobody's business except their own. You know, as far as I'm concerned, we have free will. And if I want to join a group, I will. If I want to sit down and play video games all day, I will. I have free will. We'll be back on the other side of this break. Don't go away. Whether you're a skeptic or a believer, join me, Rob McConnell, as together we'll investigate the world of the paranormal and the science of parapsychology here on the X Zone Radio TV show on XZBN and the X Zone TV channel on Simul TV. Since 1990, the X Zone Radio TV show has been the place where people dare to believe and dare to be heard. Together, we'll investigate UFOs, aliens, ghosts, Bigfoot, psychic phenomenon, lake monsters, conspiracy theories, government cover-ups, the truth embargo, alien abductions, ESP, haunted locations from around the world, and so much more. With over 28 years of broadcasting and more than 4,500 individual guests, the X Zone is truly a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality, as evidenced by the credibility, integrity, and professionalism of the guests that we bring to our international audience. If you have seen a UFO, had a close encounter, seen a ghost, Bigfoot, lake monster, or a story that you would like to share or have investigated, contact me, Rob McConnell, by sending me your email to xzone@xzoneradiotv.com, or you can call toll-free 1-800-610-7035, extension 143, and on Skype, X Zone Radio TV. For more information on the X Zone Radio TV show with yours truly, Rob McConnell, visit www.xzoneradiotv.com or www.xzonetvchannel.com or simultv.com and xzbn.net. Until next we meet here in the X Zone from our broadcast center and studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada, always remember, X Zone Nation, keep your eyes to the sky and your heart in the light.
You have heard of the X Zone? Now watch it on Simul TV, plus 500 video games, live TV channels, free video on demand, worldwide, and more. Does this sound like tomorrow's television? Well, it is, but you can have it today, right now. It is Simul TV. Simul TV offers what the others only wish they could provide. 15 exclusive channels like X-Zone, Sci-Fi, and Horror. We are worldwide. No other provider offers that. 500 built-in video games. No need to have an extra expensive system. We have them included. Free video on demand. Live streaming events from around the world. Interactive online network, and much more. Tomorrow's TV today. Simul TV. Sound too good to be true? Well, it's not. You can have Simul TV today. Sign up at simultv.com. Do it today.